My next one says solve the following inequality of x minus 1 quantity squared times the quantity of x minus 7 times the quantity of x 3x plus 5, is greater than 0, and it says use a sign chart from example 2 in order to do this. Well, in order to use example 2, well, guess what? I'm going to have to actually look at the sign chart. So where is it greater than 0? Well, that would be this piece here, which is going to be from negative infinity all the way to negative 5/3. But not including that, because that's where my y values would go from being positive to being negative, as the sign chart said, and as we just kind of talked about in our last example. And it's also above my x-axis from 7 and beyond. So from 7 to positive infinity. Alright, put a union between those and we are done with our lives. Let's move on. Alright, next ones get a little bit tougher. I don't know why my computer likes to do that occasionally. But we're just going to be talking about rational functions or fractions. Yay, fractions of polynomials. Rational functions can be positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So a fraction equals 0 when the numerator equals 0, and a fraction is undefined when the denominator equals 0. That's why when we divide by 0, it's a bad day. We always use parentheses when a fraction is undefined. For this reason, we need to include both of these values in our sign charts. Yeah, we use parentheses because 1, it's undefined, and 2, because it can't be included. Alright, so example 4 says make a sign chart for g of x, which is 3x plus 1 over the quantities of x minus 1 times quantity of x plus 3, indicate which values are zeros and which values are undefined. So we've got to make a sign chart. Fun times. And we need to use all of our values. So anything that makes my numerator equal 0 is going to be pretty dang important. So what would make my numerator equal 0? Well, that would be negative 1/3. Alright, so that's definitely going to go in my graph somewhere. So I'm going to put negative 1/3 sitting over here. That's cool. Alright, and that would be when my whole thing would equal 0. And then my other two pieces, well, if these equal 0, then my whole thing's going to be undefined. Well, that would be at positive 1 and at negative 3. And that's when it would be undefined. I don't care how you guys mark them. You can put undefined off to the side, or you can put them underneath. That's fine. That's personal preference. Alright, so now all we got to do is plug stuff in. So plugging numbers into each one of these factors. If I plugged in, for example, negative 4, I would get a negative up top over, if I plugged in negative 4 to the bottom piece right here, I would get a negative overall, and then if I plugged in negative 4 here, I would get a negative overall here as well. So negative divided by negative is positive, times another negative would be a negative overall. Alright. Next piece, I want to plug in something in between negative 3 and negative 1/3, so the easiest number is probably negative 2. So plugging in negative 2 into this piece, I would get a negative overall. Over, plugging in negative 2, I would get negative. Plugging in a negative 2 here, I would get a positive number, so negative divided by negative is positive, times another negative would be positive overall. And then finally, a number in between negative 1/3 and 1 should be probably 0 that I plug in, because that's the easiest number to plug in. Alright, so I get a positive over a negative, then I've got also a positive, so overall this piece is going to be negative, because I've got a positive divided by a negative, which is negative, times another positive. Alright, and then finally a number after 1, let's just say 2 to make it easier on ourselves. That should be a positive over a positive and a positive. Cool, so overall that whole thing is positive. Nice. That's it. Alright, so now let's move on with our lives. So it says find the value such that 3x, the whole thing, again, we're just talking about the same function, so I'm not going to read it every time, just to save our lives a little bit of time. So I'm just looking for where is this whole thing less than or less than 0. Well, that's where it's asking where is the whole thing positive, which would be on this interval here, which is from negative infinity to negative 3. Again, I'm just using my x values. And then also I see this big old negative sign, meaning, hey, overall my entire thing is negative from negative 1/3 to positive 1. Put a union between them and we're good. The next part says, okay, well, where is that whole thing less than or equal to 0? Well, that would be from still negative infinity to negative 3, but this time I can actually include negative 3 on that interval, union with negative 1/3 to positive 1, and again, this time I can actually include it because that's where my graph is going to cross from being positive to negative and negative to positive, depending on which one you're looking at. Alright, find the values which the whole thing is greater than 0. I'm just looking for where is my graph positive and my y value was. Well, that would be from negative 3 to negative 1/3. And also, it's going to be positive from 1 to positive infinity over here. Going on and on and on forever. Alright, and then where is it greater than or equal to 0? That would be from negative 3, which is included on this interval, all the way to negative 1/3, which is included on that interval, union with 1 to infinity, and infinity is never included. Cool.